Hey guys, welcome to our video. This is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection lawyer. We get a lot of questions about a 1099-C, cancellation of debt. So this is a tax form where a creditor will say, hey, we are reporting to the IRS that we forgave you a certain amount of money and now you may have to pay taxes on that. So there's lots of questions about when is a 1099-C supposed to happen? How's it supposed to be filled out? And then ultimately, if I have a creditor issue a 1099-C, do I still owe that money to the creditor? And related to that, can the creditor still credit report that I owe money to them? So I owe $5,000 to Discover Bank. Discover Bank sends a 1099. Can Discover Bank still show my credit report as a current balance of $5,000? Or does it have to show it as a zero balance because it's no longer owed? And can Discover collect on that debt? Can they send that $5,000 debt out to a debt collector to then collect against me? So what we'll do in this video is we'll look at the actual form, the 1099-C form, and then we'll look at the instructions. And then in some follow-up videos, we'll take a particular case. And there's one we'll start with from California. There's actually two parts to it, so there'll be two videos. The first decision, pretty good for consumers. Second decision, maybe not so good, or maybe it's not terrible. We'll see. And then we'll look at, I think it's a Seventh Circuit case where a debt collector is telling somebody that they may report, may issue a 1099, and the consumer argues, well, that would have been impossible to do due to the amount. And then there'll be some other cases that we'll probably look at. So if you're interested in 1099-C, I know tax law is not the most just exciting thing in the world, but this can have a huge impact on you. So if you're interested, we'll try to link these videos up in descriptions and at the end and stuff like that so that you can catch all of these videos once they're released. So here's a 1099-C. Pretty simple. 1099 is where somebody is reporting income. It might be because we're an independent contractor, but it can also be for cancellation of debt. So the creditor's name, tax ID number, the consumer's tax ID number, consumer's name, and then we get into the amount discharged and interest if the amount discharged, this box number 2, contains any interest. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Description of the debt. Was the debtor personally liable? This is really, really important. Number 6, identifiable event code. And then number 7 is more of when we're talking about a foreclosure. So let's look at the instructions. So this is 2020 instructions for 1099-A and 1099-C. So what's a 1099-A? Basically, we're talking about when property has been abandoned or foreclosed. Okay, now there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's good enough for our purposes. And for most folks, this is not critical, okay, because typically there's been some law that says if you have a debt that's forgiven in foreclosure, that will not be counted. Now that law ends every year, so it's called a sunset provision. So Congress and the president have to renew that law, but typically they have done that since the last recession. And so we won't look very closely at this 1099-A. We'll look here at 1099-C. And so this is cancellation of debt for each debtor for whom you canceled a debt owed to you of $600 or more if you are an entity described as who must file and an identifiable event has occurred. So we look at who must file. So file the Form 1099-C if you are any of the following: financial institution described in Section 581 or 591A, and it gives some examples here. It could also be a credit union, and then it's stuff that doesn't particularly apply to us. And there's also kind of a catch-all here at the end. Organization, significant trade or business is a lending of money, such as a finance company or a credit card company. Now that may be true even if you're not a financial institution like a domestic bank, trust company, etc. Okay, so the debt defined. It says a debt is any amount owed to you, principal, interest, fees, penalties, blah, blah, blah. The amount of debt canceled may be all or only part of the total amount owed. But here's the deal. You're only supposed to report the principal that is forgiven. So when do you file it? You file it the year following the calendar year in which the identifiable event occurs. So if I discover $5,000, they say pay me $3 to settle it, and I do that in 2020, well, then they would say, potentially, they'd say, hey, John, we forgave you $2,000 worth. So that happened in 2020, so that 1099 would be filed in 2021. So it would be the year following the calendar year in which that debt forgiveness occurred. So when is a debt canceled? And this is getting into the how to properly fill out this form, and as a consumer, how to read the form, because that can be very important. So if it's a bankruptcy, they do box A, okay? And just look, I'm not your tax lawyer, okay? I'm just giving you some general thoughts. Generally, though, discharged debt and bankruptcy, that's not going to be taxable. Then number 2 is, it could be like a foreclosure. And then that's box B, or you put letter B in box 6. So remember, box 6 is this identifiable event code. So let's go back to the instructions. And then number 3 is going to be, let's say statute of limitations has expired. Well, then they put C. Well, how about if the creditor elects foreclosure remedies and that prevents the creditor from then going after any deficiency or any extra amount. So I owe $300,000. My mortgage company foreclosed, sells the house for $200,000. So I still owe $100,000, but maybe the state I'm in prevents them from also collecting a deficiency. And a lot of states do not have that. So Alabama, they can foreclose and come after you for a deficiency. But if they were barred from that, they would put D in box 6. And then we have cancellation under probate. They put box C. This is really the critical one here, number 6. A discharge of indebtedness under an agreement between creditor and debtor to cancel the debt at less than full consideration, short sales. So that's F. That will come up some, okay? But the most important one is the next one. So this number 6 is going to be more of in a foreclosure context. Okay, we do a short sale. But when we're talking about credit card debt, things like that, which is normally where this comes up, it's number 7. So discharge of indebtedness because of a decision or defined policy of the creditor to discontinue collection activity and cancel the debt. Enter G. Okay, and there's some more information in here, which you can Google all this stuff and find these forms. Do they do interest? What about non-principal? But this is really the key for most folks who are in this situation of a credit card debt. They're going to get a 1099-C with the letter G in box 6. So the question is, do I still owe the money after I get a 1099-C that has the identifiable event code of G? Because G says a discharge of indebtedness because of a decision or defined policy to discontinue collection and cancel the debt. So the argument from the consumer side is, hey, you told the government you're canceling this debt, so you can't come after me for it. You can't sell it to anybody. You can't assign it to a debt collector. You can't credit report that I owe a balance. Now, the flip side is the creditors argue, oh, well, this is just accounting. This is just what we deal with taxes. This doesn't have anything to do with whether you owe the debt. And that's the battleground. Now, let me say this before I bring this video to a close. The next video, we'll look at this case from 2017 in California that lays out both sides of the argument when you have the code G in box 6. Let me just say this. Oftentimes, people confuse a charge-off with the 1099-C. They'll say, oh, well, my creditor charged that off, so that means the debt's been canceled. Well, those are two different things. A charge-off is just an accounting function. Okay. But this, what we're talking about here, is a 1099 sent to the federal government that says to the federal government, we have canceled the debt. So those are two different things. So basically, every debt canceled would at some point have been charged off. But there's tons of debt that's charged off that there's never a 1099-C issued on that debt. So keep that in mind. So appreciate you watching this video. If you are interested in sort of this series or this thread here, then subscribe to the channel and also look at the end of this video or in the description. There should be a link to the next video. Now, the day we put this one up, there won't quite be a link, but the following day we'll have the next video in this series on 1099. So thanks for watching this, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.